The prospect, again, of Elon Musk taking over Twitter is freaking out the blue check marks. It is freaking out the media. The media, who are supposed to be all in favor of more speech, not less speech, more journalism, not less journalism. It turns out they don't like speech and they don't like journalism. They like to do what they want to do. And anybody who stands in their way is bad. And also, anybody who doesn't just elevate their material and elevates alternative material is also bad. And so now you have the specter of the Washington Post, owned by the second richest person on earth, Jeff Bezos, going after Elon Musk. And the reason, this is on the front page of the Washington Post yesterday, the reason they're going after Elon Musk is because Elon Musk is now criticizing Twitter executives, not by name. He didn't criticize them by name. He's criticizing how Twitter was run. How dare he? This is very bad. You are not allowed to criticize people at the company you're about to take over, even though you're about to take the company over because you have critiques of the company, apparently, according to the Washington Post. So the Washington Post has an entire piece today about how Elon Musk is a big, bad, evil, bad, mean man who's bad. It's called Elon Musk Boosts Criticism of Twitter Executives, Prompting Online Attacks. This is the way that the left likes to work this thing. If you criticize somebody on the left, even if that person is a public figure, and then that person receives blowback, it is your fault. So if you just not criticize, then they wouldn't receive the blowback. Now, if you are Taylor Lorenz, a reporter for the Washington Post, and you try to uncover the identity of an anonymous Twitter account called Libs of TikTok, and all that account does is just finds dumb left-wingers on TikTok who post crazy stuff and then post that stuff on Twitter. You unleash Taylor Lorenz on that person. You have Taylor Lorenz knock on the doors of the person's relatives. You have Taylor Lorenz link to the person's real estate profile so that the personal information is available. And then later you delete the link and you pretend that this is excellent and necessary journalism. That's what the Washington Post does about Libs of TikTok, because it's really important to know who stands behind an account that's entire job is to just retweet things that leftists have put out there publicly. But if Elon Musk criticizes Twitter employees without naming them, then this is an act of harassment. And this is because Elon Musk is bad. This ties into the broader narrative that the left is trying to tell about Elon Musk, which is that what he really wants is to open up the floodgates on Twitter to abuse and cruelty and malice. That's what this is about. Because remember, according to the left, free speech is really not a thing. Free speech is just a guise for power. This is all part of the deconstructionist woke attack on rights. The basic idea here is that any principle you hold is really a reflection of power structure. So if you're in favor of free speech, it's not because you believe that everybody should be able to speak freely. The reason you're in favor of free speech is because you are one of the powerful, and the system of free speech helps you. If you really wanted equity, if you wanted justice, if you wanted speech justice, is what the left does is they take any modifier, put it in front of the word justice, and then pretend that this is now a principle. If you wanted equity and speech justice, what you would do is quash the speech of the more powerful, and you would shut up and listen to the less powerful. And Elon Musk instead is saying that everybody should be able to speak freely, and this is because he's attempting to re-enshrine his own power. And we know that he's attempting to do this because he's being so mean to people like Twitter employees, like the Twitter top lawyer, Vijaya Gadde, who earned, get ready for this, $17 million last year. She is a victim. She is a victim of Elon Musk's evil brutality, making $17 million a year to shut down content at Twitter. So according to the Washington Post, 2 days after striking a deal to purchase Twitter, Elon Musk used his powerful Twitter account to elevate conservative criticism of two executives at the social media company, roiling a workforce already uneasy about how he will balance his abrasive social media style and embrace of free speech with the stewardship of the company. Well, I mean, if the workforce doesn't like it, well, I mean, that's a real problem, isn't it? Now, again, as a person who's the co-founder of a major media company, let me just say, if the workforce doesn't like how this company is run, the door is located over there. This is super simple. If you don't wish to receive a paycheck from this company, there are plenty of other places you can receive a paycheck. But according to the Washington Post, Elon Musk, the richest person on planet Earth, needs to take advice from a bunch of barely college-educated left-wing 26-year-olds who spend their days with their button on the band finger. According to the Washington Post, on Wednesday, Elon Musk tweeted a meme to his more than 86 million followers with the face of Twitter's top lawyer, Vijaya Gadde, that appeared to suggest the company's decisions are affected by left-wing bias. No. This is harassment and evil. The tweet came hours after he criticized a 2020 policy decision Gadde made and was in response to an earlier tweet from a political podcast host calling her the company's top censorship advocate. Twitter users quickly piled on. Wait, you mean that he said a true thing about the lawyer over at Twitter? who, by the way, is a public figure who has appeared on Joe Rogan's show. And he said a thing about this person's handling of censorship. And people piled on, ye gods, egad. Twitter users quickly piled on, calling on Musk to fire Gaddy or using racist language to describe her. So is that Musk's fault? First of all, he should fire her. As far as using racist language, is that Musk's fault? Did he use racist language? So if I say Joe Biden is a bad president, and then somebody immediately calls him an MFer, is that my fault? Or is that the person who used the curse word? Like, how does that work exactly? If I say that I think Joy Reid is a terrible MSNBC host, and then somebody immediately throws a racial taunt at her, is that my fault? Because I feel like if that's the case, then Bernie Sanders is responsible for the congressional baseball shooting. Barack Obama is responsible for the murder of 6 police officers in Dallas, Texas, circa 2015. Like, if that's the way this is going to work, then the consequences for speech are rather dire, which, by the way, this only applies. The left does think this. They just think it applies only to one side. So if Elon Musk says a thing and then someone else does a bad thing because they were ticked off by something Elon Musk said, it's Elon Musk's fault. If, however, Bernie Sanders says that Republicans are killing millions of people with their healthcare plans, and then somebody goes and shoots a bunch of Republican Congress people, then obviously that was just a crazy person. It has nothing to do with Bernie Sanders. Gaddy was born in India and immigrated to the United States as a child. One user said she would go down in history as an appalling person. Oh my God. A user, an anonymous user, one user on Twitter, which has hundreds of millions of users, said a mean thing about this lawyer who earned $17 million a year? Well, hold the fort, stop the presses, hold up that Twitter sale. According to the Washington Post, Musk's tweets have singular power to unleash mobs against people with much lower profiles than 280 characters or less. As Musk stakes his $44 billion takeover of one of the world's most influential social media platforms on the promise of restoring free speech there, his rhetoric is at odds with the way his supporters have weaponized Twitter, prompting people to lock down their personal profiles and public information. Well, I mean, you wouldn't want to have supporters weaponizing Twitter. Like, you wouldn't want to have a reporter from the Washington Post doxing libs of TikTok and then revealing personal information about that person. Or if you're the Washington Post, you would want that. You would link directly to the person's real estate profile, and then you would actually sponsor the story with advertising on Twitter. That's what you would do if you're the Washington Post. I mean, the hypocrisy of these people is insane. And it's not just the hypocrisy, it's the absolute double standard. Elon Musk mentions he doesn't like the policy that is purveyed by Twitter's big $17 million a year lawyer. And this means that he's a harasser, and therefore somebody has to step in and stop the brutality. April Glazer, senior research fellow at the Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy at Harvard's Kennedy School, said, quote, Musk has actually used Twitter as his slingshot when going after critics. It's not surprising he would then want to have greater control of that slingshot. Well, I mean, as opposed to the Washington Post, which has never wanted to have power over social media, which is why half of their staff has been delegated to try and stop the sale of Twitter to Elon Musk. And the New York Times and Washington, they have no dog in this fight. They are perfectly objective journalismers, getting their hot, sticky journalism just everywhere. Musk's power to unleash his followers in this way has alarmed some Twitter workers who expressed concerns at a company town hall meeting on Monday and in interviews about the possibility of being mentioned in tweets by their future boss. It is unusual for an incoming owner to make any public comment about future employees, much less publicly criticize their performance or past decisions. Well, I mean, that is unusual, and that's really, really bad. The terms of his deal to acquire Twitter allow the SpaceX and Tesla CEO to tweet about his acquisition, so long as the tweets do not disparage the company or any of its representatives. A person familiar with the deal-making process who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe a confidential matter said the so-called disparagement clause is only applicable when Musk is tweeting or commenting about the deal itself. So negative comments about Twitter outside of that don't violate his terms. Well, I mean, again, if you're trying to moot a $44 billion sale because Elon Musk tweeted something vaguely critical of the company's top lawyer, which is what happened here, good luck with that. Musk views Twitter as the de facto town square, a place where rules should be kept to a minimum. Twitter employees, however, have spent years developing sophisticated protocols to police its platform for hate speech and other rule-breaking content, including recently investing in tools to limit online harassment. Now the company is being acquired by the world's richest person whose views are fundamentally at odds with those of much of the workforce. Well, I mean, that's devastating stuff, devastating. So you can see the media attempting to step in and stop big, bad, mean, terrible, bad Elon Musk from abusing poor little Vijaya Gadde, the $17 million a year Twitter lawyer whose main job consists of censoring people she doesn't like. By the way, buried down in this story, the Washington Post acknowledges Musk did not specifically name or tag Gadde. But he did respond to a tweet by political podcast host Sagar Enjeti, in which she was named, drawing more than 400,000 likes, retweets, and replies on Musk's post. Wow, I mean, so just to get this straight, Musk did not name the person, but he replied to a tweet that did name the person. So he's responsible for all of this stuff. And so he's bad. And so this must be, it just shows that he's only taking this thing over because he wants more harassment. He wants more harassment. And that's terrible. It's just, there's so much harassment on Twitter. Like this. Let me make clear, as someone who is no foreigner to being harassed on Twitter, grow a thick skin. Like seriously, you are the Twitter head of legal. You are a public figure. Grow up. And the Washington Post, which spends its days doing the dirty scut work of the Democratic Party in uncovering meme accounts that it doesn't like for destruction. You're being a little sensitive here, but this is the new narrative. The new narrative is Elon Musk is so mean. Like really, by the way, this is so much of the entire Democratic media complex narrative now boils down to this. We're going to do something incredibly aggressive. We're going to shut down free speech on things like Twitter. We're going to shadow ban people. We're going to ban accounts for no apparent reason. We're going to shut down the Babylon Bee for saying that men cannot be women. We're going to do all of these things. And if you step in and say, no, free speech means that you should be able to say these things, you say, you're so mean. It's just terrible. Why are you doing it? Okay, your tears mean nothing. I have an entire tumbler dedicated to drinking them. They mean nothing to me. Because guess what? Unless you're crying for a good reason, not because you're just being a bitchy little pathetic whiner, I got nothing for you. But this is the entire leftist pitch, right? The entire leftist pitch these days, we get to indoctrinate your children in school the way we want to do it. And then if you say, no, you don't get to do that. They go, well, that's so mean. It's just terrible. And the tears begin. Okay, here's the deal. In terms of people I care about crying, just generally speaking. I mean, there's an entire article yesterday about Vijaya Gadde crying on a Twitter internal phone call to all the employees who are so deeply upset, weeping tears of salty rage at Elon Musk taking over. Here is a complete list of the people whose tears I care about. My wife, my kids, my siblings, my parents. That's the entire list. There are no other people on that list. Employees, Twitter heads, Washington Post writers, Jeff Bezos. Don't care about any of those people crying. You know why? Because they are grown-ups. And if they cannot control their emotions, that is their problem. But again, the entire, it is amazing. And by the way, the reason that the left is doing this, the reason that the left is responding with the tears is because they know they've lost the argument. And so they start to cry. Now, that's a tactic that works in marriage. It does. I'll be honest with you. Like when my wife and I are having a discussion and it turns into tears, I lose. I mean, that's an automatic I lose. Okay, and that's true for every husband everywhere. Gentlemen, as soon as your wife starts crying, the argument is over and you've lost. However, in the non-marital world, when somebody starts crying, it's because generally they have lost the argument. The reason the left, however, goes to this is because they realize that there is sort of a congenital niceness to most Americans, and that when people start to cry and whimper and talk about how hard their lives are, you sympathize, right? There's something inside you that swells to their tears. And so what the left has done for years is they've played the victim and they've wept, and then they've moved forward with incredibly aggressive policy. How dare you victimize us? We're going to cry about it. So you really should. Do you want these tears? Do you want us to cry? We're going to cry. This is why you have pieces like Elizabeth Spiers today in the New York Times. Quote, let's be clear about what it's like to be harassed on Twitter. Tell me, Elizabeth, what it's like to be harassed on Twitter. Tell me, I who trend every 3 weeks for some random stupid reason. I who was the number one target of all anti-Semitic Twitter hate on planet Earth in 2015 and 2016. Please, tell me what it's like to be harassed on Twitter. Please. And tell me why you now get to control the rules. Now, some of us are mature enough to say that when people harass us on Twitter, you have a mute button. And then there are those of us who suggest that we ought to control the levers of informational dissemination because our feels got hurt. So Elizabeth Spiers tweets, quote, and she writes in the New York Times, again, this is the entire argument. The new argument is Elon Musk is bad and mean because he says things. And he's not even being bad and mean, but people who follow him then say mean things. And mean things are bad. And we can tell mean things are bad because my feelings are hurt. So the more my feelings are hurt, the more bad they are. So Elizabeth Spiers writes, quote, the Tesla co-founder and chief executive, Elon Musk, is set to shortly become the new owner of a slightly used social media platform with more than 217 million daily users. He has said very little about how he plans to make the business work, but one thing is clear. He is really, really preoccupied with how we talk on the platform and appears intent on rolling back some of its moderation policies in order to allow all legal speech on Twitter. The statements of free speech absolutists like Mr. Musk conflates harassment with criticism. I've been on the receiving end of both. In my 2 decades of writing columns about media, finance, culture, and politics, there's a material difference between the two. To wit, a couple of weeks ago, a former colleague of Mr. Musk's at PayPal, Keith Rabois, called me dumb on Twitter after I suggested that eliminating moderation policies would be bad for Twitter's business. This is not particularly sophisticated criticism, but neither is it harassment. However, I've also received rape threats, anonymous letters to my home address, threatening comments about my family, all manner of misogynistic pejoratives that are not principal in this newspaper, from my stated positions on everything from abortion to hiring practices at startups to who the next James Bond should be. Okay, so I'm unaware that Musk is saying that rape threats are now legal on Twitter, that's totally fine. By the way, my understanding is that rape threats are generally not legal at all. That is a form of assault. If I threaten you with rape, that is a crime and I will go to jail. So I'm unaware how Musk is changing the policy that rape threats are now okay on the platform. But, says Elizabeth Spiers, getting rid of policies that restrict hate speech will most likely affect women and minorities much more than it does white men. White men. Always the pejorative of the day. White. And by the way, if you don't pronounce the H before the W, you're doing it wrong. It's not white men. It's white men, like Mr. Musk. And unlike him, most people on the receiving end of threats and harassment can't afford personal security. Twitter's rules already allow for a broad range of abuse, much of which falls into a kind of gray area between personal insult and harassment. What exactly does he believe can't be said on the platform right now? It certainly doesn't take long to find discredited race science, arguments that women are intellectually inferior, anti-Semitism, defenses of white supremacism, and transphobic comments that remain on the platform even under current policy. Well, here's one. How about men are not women? How about that? Yeah, but she says, it is easy to assume that the banned speech Musk is standing up for is worse even than that. As the comedian Michael Che put it on Saturday Night Live, the $44 billion deal shows, quote, how badly white guys want to use the N-word. So again, this is all about Elizabeth Spiers' hurt feelings. She's got hurt feelings, guys. And that means that it's so sad. It's really sad. Also, the Washington Post is noting now, I love this. So the Washington Post, which is itself a corporate takeover with social activism at its center, is now noticing, only now do they notice, quote, Elon Musk's free speech takeover, part of new corporate activism wave. Oh, you think. So for literally several decades, we have now had left-wing activists taking over major American corporations from the inside. Not just shareholders like BlackRock, but the whole stakeholder economy, in which you have CEOs basically dancing to the tune of the far left. But only when Elon Musk takes over Twitter do we now notice in the business section of the Washington Post that there is a corporate activism wave. Well, Elon Musk is a response to the corporate activism wave. I mean, that's precisely what is happening right now, and they cannot deal with it. We're in a battle for the culture and for our values. Like and subscribe to help keep our videos on the front line of the fight and top of your feed.